birth control can't balance your hormones. Like it physically is impossible. And I think that is so important to understand because it's suppressing ovulation, which is the main event of your cycle. It's how you're going to regulate your cycle. Even the copper IUD indirectly affects your hormones because copper makes estrogen more estrogenic. It makes it stronger. Have we ever wondered why one of the side effects of copper is heavier periods and painful period cramps? It's because of the copper and estrogen relationship.
Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm Jenn Trepeck, your host and health coach, here with you every week, as you know. And today, we're taking the first few steps in tackling a topic that I think is becoming more and more and more on people's radars. So today we're going to talk about hormones and balancing hormones with options other than birth control, which is often what doctors recommend. And then, P.S., quick note for all the men out there. I know that you just heard birth control and hormones and you're like, pause, stop, don't. Stay with us. I recommend that you listen in because odds are you know someone with female biology and potentially you will have daughters in your life, or you do have daughters. And this is really important information. I also firmly believe that women's health is human health across the board, full stop. So we want to have this conversation. And by the way, we're going to continue this whole thing. We're going to talk more about hormonal birth control and coming off hormonal birth control and all that stuff later this summer. So let me introduce you to today's featured guest. She's a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner specializing in hormonal balance for women. Why she's here, right? She helps women balance their hormones naturally with nutrition, lifestyle, and finally getting to the root issue. She's personally helped over 400 women get painless periods, stabilize their moods, lose weight, and scale to six figures in their businesses. She has a passion for helping women connect to their cycle, which is their superpower. You may recognize her from her podcast, Balancing Hormones Naturally. By the way, shameless plug, check out episode 105, which aired in April of this year, featuring yours truly. Anyway, when she's not chatting about hormones, you'll probably find her hanging out with her two sons and her husband in the outdoors or reading a good book. So without further ado, I give you Leah Brueggemann.
Thanks for having me on. As soon as you said three words, you have such a good announcer voice. Like you could be an announcer. It's the inflection. I love it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to welcome you here. It's official. Salad with a side of fries. Yeah.
Yes. It's been in the making.
I know. And we were saying before we started recording how nice it is to jump into each other's communities. So thrilled to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So I want to start with your story, but I don't want to interrupt you too many times. So we'll tell our members what they're getting first, and then we'll have flow. Sound good?
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. So members, you have so many goodies coming your way this week. So the first one, your recipe is for a breakfast casserole. So everybody always asks about ways to change up breakfast without taking up a ton of time in the morning. This one is all whole foods, protein and fiber, starts your day strong. You can make it over the weekend, have it for the week. You can also use this base recipe and change it up with your favorite veggies or different things that you have in your fridge at any given time. So you're going to love that. Then, aligned with today's episode, I'm sending you an article from our friends at Levels Health that is titled, right? Love them. They're so good. But the article is the link between PCOS and insulin resistance. So you guys are going to love that one, right?
They can't see my face, but I'm just like, yeah.
I know. And the two things are so intimately connected, and yet a lot of times our health professionals don't talk about it. So we're going to talk about it. You're going to know about it. And then finally, since it's the last month of the quarter, it is time for your quarterly live Q&A. By popular demand, it's a one-on-one. So spots are only available the month of June. So I say this with love, but get on that before time runs out. And for those of you that I've already connected with, it's been a blast. I love spending 30 minutes one-on-one with you. So if you want the recipe, the article, or to chat just you and me for a half hour, be sure you're a member. Go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries For $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool like today, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions with me. A total deal, frankly, a steal, right? When you take advantage of the full offerings this month alone, you're making back your money for the year. A no-brainer way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Plus, your membership supports this podcast and this community so we can continue to do this because I would love nothing more. We are over 200 episodes and counting. So support us, join us, go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries, or just click the link in the show notes because that's easier. Once you're there, it's about 3 clicks. You're going to click support now, type your email and payment method, click subscribe, and you're all set. You're going to get this week's recipe for the breakfast casserole, the article, the link between PCOS and insulin resistance, and details to schedule your quarterly live session, just you and me.
That's so worth it. I know I'm not supposed to talk right now.
You are.
That's so worth it. Like the levels, like I've worked with them before.
Me too.
And I adore them and their whole team. And the articles that they send out and Dr. Kelly Chu is just love it.
I know. I love their stuff. Yeah. And I wore one of their CGMs for a month. I love it. Can't say enough good things.
Yes.
Okay, but Leah, back to you. So tell us your story because like so many of us, it's your own experience that led you to this work. So
yes, I'm going to do the speed version because I could talk for a long time. So I actually went to college for music and I got my bachelor's in piano and voice, which is the polar opposite of what I do now. Like I still play for weddings and things like that, but
that's awesome.
I just kind of took a sharp turn to the health world. And that's coming from somebody who I thought Skittles were acceptable for breakfast. And I lived on bagels and coffee in college. And I thought I was invincible, right? And then I graduated college and I was so tired all the time. But, you know, I just chalked it up to like, I didn't sleep in college. So that's got to be it, right?
Right. All those years, it just adds up.
Yeah. So I was like, I just need to sleep for a while, but it never got better. I would sleep for like 10 plus hours at night and be super tired. And I was doing a self-breast exam. Everybody should do those. And I discovered like a golf ball size lump and I freaked out. So I got into the doctor right away and they sent me for ultrasound because I was too young for a mammogram. And I got diagnosed with fibroadenomas. And if you don't know what those are, they're benign breast tumors. And they recommended that I should have them surgically removed. So there's a whole thing with fibroadenomas. Like most of them are simple, about some of them can be complex. If you have a complex fibroadenoma, you're about 5% more likely to get breast cancer. I tested negative for both BRCA genes. So I personally decided not to have them removed simply because of the fact that I was self-employed and you're going to go through this really expensive surgery. And this is the clincher. Most of them come back. I'm like, what? I'm going to pay for this really expensive surgery and it's going to come back. Why on earth would I do that? So I personally decided not to do that. And that's when I jumped into trying to figure out what was causing these. Now, I did have the blessing. My mom was very into holistic health. So I didn't really know much about it. You know, growing up, it was just like this thing that mom did, but I knew it was an option. So I started down that route and I went to all the doctors and I did all of the things. And I kept trying all of these things that were so targeted for my fibroadenomas. You know, you would go to this doctor, they would listen to your story and they'd be like, I know what's wrong with you. And they would put me on this extensive protocol for my fibroadenomas. It would be super restrictive diet. I'm talking restrictive as in like, you can have a half a potato a day. That's all. Like, that's it. Because you have to like starve all of the bad things in your body. So that was hard.
To say the least. I mean, that's
it's hard. Oh my gosh. And so many supplements. I remember there was one time when I was on over $300 worth of supplements per month. That wasn't like $300 for like a quarter. It was like $300 plus every single month for the unforeseeable future. And I was just like, this is crazy. And I remember getting a call after they had reviewed my labs again. And they're like, oh, you have to continue on the diet that you're on. And I was like, I can do anything for like 3 months, right? I can do it for 3 months. And when I got that call and they were like, you need to continue, I just bawled my eyes out on the couch, like literally just bawled my eyes out. I was like, it was insane. I didn't actually continue past that point because I'm like, this isn't sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Right.
And
how could you?
Yeah. And it's like my fibroadenomas weren't budging, you know? And so all I was doing was messing up my relationship with food. Nobody had talked to me about my cycles, which were all over the place. Like they were so irregular. My period cramps were so bad that I would be throwing up even after I had taken the Midol. I used to pop that stuff like it was candy. And my periods were so irregular that I had to constantly prepare for my period. Like if I was traveling, I had to bring bucket loads of period products and all the Midol because who knew when my period was going to show up? It was so unpredictable. And so this was about 2 years into this. And so I had started tracking my cycle at this point, and I just had so many light bulbs start to go off. I'm like, why was nobody ever talking about my ovulation? Why were we so focused on these fibroadenomas and nobody was realizing that I wasn't ovulating regularly and that my luteal phase, which is from ovulation to my period, was 8 days, which isn't sustainable for a pregnancy. Like nobody was talking about this, that, you know, they just tried to put me on a progesterone cream or, you know, whatever it was. So that's why I just threw everything out the window. I was like, this isn't working. And I started just eating for nourishment, like really trying to come back to the roots of like, oh, you're hungry. Let's like try and find something that is satiating and makes you feel good and really tune into like, what does my digestion feel? And, you know, that was a whole long spiral. And we turned up as a functional practitioner. I just, you know, decided let's just go the route and learn all of the things. And I did get rid of my fibroadenomas and got rid of the cysts on my ovaries, regularly ovulated, lengthened my luteal phase, got it to 12 days. So I had 2 healthy pregnancies so far and completely painless periods. Completely. I mean, shameless plug, but like I just finished my period and it still amazes me when I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I just came and went.
Like how uneventful. And wouldn't that be nice? Right. So
yes,
I love your story because I think it highlights what is unfortunately almost universal for women. And that is we're more taught to manipulate the hormones with, you know, the progesterone cream or hormonal birth control than we're taught about actually understanding our cycle or that someone's even asking us about our cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start there, right?
Yeah.
Walk us through, like you started talking about the luteal phase, but walk us through the 4 phases of the cycle so that everybody can be on the same page in even like, what are we talking about? Because I would also bet there are people listening who are maybe even past the point of getting periods in their life, but still don't know this.
Yeah. Well, it would be important to teach the women in your life if you're past that point. So when you're thinking about your menstrual cycle, I just need to touch on birth control really quick because that is the Band-Aid that's given out for any hormonal issue. Like, let's put it on. Birth control can't balance your hormones. Like it physically is impossible. And I think that is so important to understand because it's suppressing ovulation, which is the main event of your cycle. It's how you're going to regulate your cycle. Even the copper IUD indirectly affects your hormones because copper makes estrogen more estrogenic. It makes it stronger. Have we ever wondered why one of the side effects of copper is heavier periods and painful period cramps? It's because of the copper and estrogen relationship. Think about birth control as you have a gunshot wound and you go to your doctor and they're like, here, let me put a Band-Aid on that. Like literally, like, let's not take the bullet out. Let's like not make sure you have an infection. Let's just put a Band-Aid on it, like cover up the wound. And things start to get worse, right? Because you aren't getting the bullet out. You aren't fixing things. Now, that's kind of a dramatic analogy, but I have so many women that have all of these issues and they go on birth control and they come off and everything is just so much worse, you know? And why are they not, they're like, why was I not told that birth control compromises my gut microbiome, that it depletes me of necessary vitamins and minerals? Like on the combined pill, for example, your hormones much more resemble menopause.
Yes.
It's like, what?
Medicated menopause. Yeah.
Why aren't we told these things? So when we're thinking about our cycle, you have 4 phases. It's not just your period. Okay. And I am 100% with you. I used to think that my period was my cycle. Like I did. I thought, you know, I go on my period, I'm off my period, and that's the end. We don't think about it again. Right. but you have this cyclical cycle, right? It's continually going and you're moving in and out of these phases. And so when we look at nutrition and when we look at exercise and we look at moods, we expect to show up like a man. A man has a 24-hour cycle, literally. Beginning of the day into the end of the day, it resets and he starts over, which is why, for example, getting less sleep doesn't affect men the same way it affects women. The stress doesn't affect men the same way as it affects women because stress doesn't affect testosterone the same way, right? So when you're looking at your menstrual cycle, you have to be looking at it in terms of phases so you know what to expect from your energy and your mood and nutrition and how you can fuel your body, because then you're setting these building blocks up for optimal hormones versus like, why do I feel this way, right? So when we are on our period, which is phase number 1, right? Menses, menstrual phase. I like to think about it as winter, right? Think about this phase as you go into hibernation. Not really, but kind of. Like you're going to have lower energy. You aren't going to be running marathons. So if you have a little bit of lower energy, you shouldn't be mad at yourself. You shouldn't be like, well, what's going on, right? And so understanding you're literally shedding the lining of your uterus is so important, right? To nourish your body and think about it in terms of Chinese medicine, in terms of like bringing lots of warmth into your body. Warmth gets rid of pain, cold brings pain. So lots of warmth, lots of relaxing. You know, you shouldn't feel like you got hit by a truck, you know, where you're so tired you can't get out of bed. But it's like maybe today you decide you're going to do some yoga or some light Pilates, or you're going to go on a walk instead of maybe doing heavy weightlifting, or you're like, I was going to run 10 miles today. Maybe, you know, your period's not a great time to do that. Your period should be about 3 to 7 days. You shouldn't be bleeding less than 25 milliliters and you shouldn't be bleeding over 80 milliliters. And I know you all saw stars. We're like, how do I measure my blood? A normal tampon or pad holds about 5 milliliters and overnight holds about 10. So you can just think about how much you're using. And the reason why this clues you in, if it's under 25 milliliters, that's cluing you in that maybe your estrogen didn't get high enough to build your uterine lining. Okay. So again, your cycle is telling you these things. If it's over 80 milliliters, you're saying, okay, maybe my estrogen is too high, or maybe my progesterone is just not high enough to support that estrogen, right? So this is really giving you those clues, and you shouldn't be, you know, spotting beforehand. You shouldn't be spotting afterhand. It should be a nice cherry red flow. We don't want any of this like dark brown. You know, we want that healthy cherry red flow, and you should just bleed.
I just have to pause for a hot second.
Yes.
3 to 7 days. I have never met a woman with a 3-day period.
I have so many people who have a 3-day period.
Oh, bless them. Okay. I'm sorry. I had a moment. Like you're talking about all the milliliters and I'm stuck on 3 days. We're good. Keep going.
Yes. It can be 3 days. And I just love it. Like I just got a text from one of my clients and she goes, I'm on day 1 of my period. I didn't have any spotting. I'm not dizzy. I don't have a headache. Like it's just a day. Like, what is this? And I'm like, this is life. Like, this is normal life. But we have just been taught that periods are the bane of being a woman. Like, they're horrible. You should suffer. And, you know, literally, you think you need to have all of this Motrin and Midol, and you're going to be bloated and you can't go anywhere on your period. And you guys, that's not normal. It's so common. We have jokes about it and stereotypes, but it's not normal. So it's a great time to be reflective. Like if you think of your period, journal, think back. What went well? What didn't go well? What do you want to change? What would you like to do differently? It's a great reflective stage, not a great stage to make life decisions, you know? So just reflect. Don't make the decisions, just reflect. And then follicular phase is named so perfectly because your follicle is getting ready to release that egg. And follicular phase starts as soon as you're done bleeding, and we'll head right into your ovulatory phase. Follicular phase is almost everybody's favorite phase. This is your Beyonce phase. It's when estrogen's rising. And everybody likes to give estrogen such a bad rap. Like I have hormonal issues. I'm estrogen dominant. Like estrogen and cancer. Like we always just hate estrogen, right? We need estrogen. So, you know, when your lips get fuller or you look in the mirror and you're just like, whoa, I look so cute today. That's estrogen, you guys. Literally, estrogen makes your lips look fuller. It makes you feel cuter. Your face gets more symmetrical as you head closer to ovulation. And I think one of the best ways to think about this is even though your hormones do so many other things, their primary function is reproduction, right? So even though they affect mood, they affect energy, they affect digestion. So if you think about that literally just in primal terms, like, of course you're going to feel cuter heading into ovulation. Hello, like the science, right? So this is also the phase when you have more energy, you're more creative, you're more sociable, right? If you ever are somebody where you want to make all these coffee dates with your friends, and then 2 weeks from now, you're like, why on earth did I decide to do that? That's because you probably made them in your follicular phase when you're like, I love people. Let's go see people and socialize. This is also the phase that determines the length of your cycle. So you can have a very long follicular phase. And so you're going to be someone that maybe is on the 36 day end of a cycle, or you can have a really short follicular phase. Some people, it's only like 4 or 5 days, right? And this is the one that really can fluctuate in length. Such a myth that people always have to ovulate on day 14. Oh my goodness, no. Like you can ovulate. If you're ovulating before cycle day 21, you're good. You know, you're doing good. So when you end follicular phase is when you start creating cervical mucus. Okay. Cervical mucus tells us, hello, we're entering into this ovulatory phase. And cervical mucus is a good sign. You don't want, overloads of it, but it is a good sign, right? It's a sign vitamin A is doing well, hydration is doing well, estrogen's doing well. So estrogen, it starts in your brain, says, hey, ovaries, let's make some estrogen. Estrogen gets to a certain level and it says, hey, brain, like we're at the level that we need to. And brain goes, all right, go ahead and release LH hormone, your luteinizing hormone. That's what triggers the ovulation. So your ovulatory phase is that cervical mucus is starting to get created, right? That follicle's just about ready to release that egg. And then ovulation literally is just like a one-time thing. It's not like you're ovulating just randomly throughout your cycle, which is something I've heard. People think that they just randomly ovulate. It's like, no.
Which is also why I feel like, and this is sort of a sidebar, but like we're taught that it's so easy to get pregnant. It's not actually right.
Yeah.
Right. Like it can be, but also it's not like every day of the month when you're not on your period.
Well, and it's crazy too, because like I'll have so many clients who are struggling with fertility and they didn't even know about like ovulatory phase. They're just, if you're struggling with fertility, doctors are like, you need to have sex every other day. And it's like, well, what? There's so many other things you need to be, looking at and supporting. So ovulatory phase is the most empathetic phase. It's also testosterone reaches its highest point. So you're also a little bit more ballsy. Libido is higher at this point too. So I always tell people like, if you want to ask for a raise or you need to have a hard conversation or you have a networking event or you are going to schedule interviews or you're going to be speaking somewhere, ovulatory phase, you're going to feel your best unless you have like estrogen and histamine issues, then you aren't. But if you don't have those issues, you're going to love that ovulatory phase, right? And then you ovulate and you can drop a second egg actually within that 24-hour window, but it's within that 24-hour window. And then you ovulate and that follicle that released the egg forms your corpus luteum, which is what supports and rises up progesterone. Progesterone shuts down any other ovulation. So that's the key thing there. Like I have so many people that will say, oh, there was a study done. I think it was actually in Canada where this guy was saying, oh, no, you can ovulate multiple times. It's like, no, he wasn't looking at the ovulation. He was looking at the follicle development, right? All of these follicles are developing until one becomes the dominant one and it ovulates, right? And then progesterone is produced. It shuts down the ovulation. So you don't produce progesterone until after ovulation. So again, if you're going to get your hormones tested, hello, you have to do it after ovulation. And if you're someone that ovulates on day 18 or 19, that whole myth of like, you have to get your hormones tested on day 19, it would show that you have no progesterone, right? Because you haven't ovulated yet. It's not risen to its peak. So understanding your cycle also helps you get more answers from your doctor because you know what's going on. You're like, hey, I have issues around ovulation. I would really like to know what's going on with my testosterone and my estrogen because those are the hormones that are highest at that time. Okay. So I deviate back to your fourth phase. So you've ovulated. Corpus luteum is formed, producing progesterone. This is called your luteal phase. Makes sense, right? Corpus luteum, luteal phase. And this is for women who have hormonal issues. This is typically this and your period are the worst phases, right? And this is because of progesterone. So progesterone is made from pregnenolone, as is cortisol, which is your fight or flight hormone. And your body does not steal from progesterone to make cortisol. That's been debunked, but your body does prioritize cortisol, right? So again, let's come back to primal. Let's think primary reason for these hormones is reproduction. So if your body is in fight or flight and it doesn't feel safe, do you really think it's focusing on babies and progesterone? No, it's not. It's focusing on you have a really stressful job and your stress is all over the place. And that's where I need to focus my energy right now. Even though you're like, body, I'm not trying to get pregnant right now. Can we just, stop with it all? But progesterone also helps with your mood. It also helps with your energy. Progesterone also really helps with acne. It also really, really helps with period cramps. It also really helps with bloating and digestion and all of those things, right? So even though your body wasn't trying to get pregnant, you have to think about that in terms of what is the primary function, right? And then think about the cascade. Stress is like the cascade for everything. So when you're in that luteal phase, if you have lower progesterone, you'll tend to notice symptoms like maybe tender breasts, or maybe you have spotting before your period, or maybe you get a ton of bloating, or maybe you just want to kill everybody that comes into contact with you. You get super snappy, or maybe you get really anxious or super PMSy, or you start breaking out. Progesterone may be the culprit. But you want to think about that estrogen and progesterone in relation. Progesterone may be okay, and then estrogen is just too high in relation to it. Or maybe progesterone does get up high enough, but then it falls too quickly. There's so many instances there. And your luteal phase is your longest phase. So it should be 12 to 14 days. That's it. It shouldn't be under. And it can't go over 17. It can't. Physically impossible. Can't. So if you have confirmed ovulation to a T and you're on day 19 of your luteal phase and you are for sure that you ovulated, you can take a pregnancy test. Actually, you don't really have to. It's positive.
Leah has diagnosed you as pregnant. No, I'm just kidding. But I think, the whole thing about this, first of all, thank you. I love the analogies. I love the way you talk about it because it makes it easier to understand. And I think I always say it all the time, by understanding a bit of the science of it in an approachable way, we can recognize and sort of validate and have a bit of that self-compassion of why we're experiencing what we are. We don't suck, right? Yeah. It's very biochemical. And you started to touch on this too, as you were saying, but we can actually use our own understanding of our cycle, the complete cycle, as a diagnostic tool.
Yes.
Right? So we can look at what's happening or not happening. Any recommendations about, you gave us one on sort of when we might want to go for testing, especially with progesterone. Any other recommendations on that before we transition?
I have a lot of thoughts there. So you do want to test progesterone 5 to 7 days after ovulation. So that's why it's so important to track ovulation. An app can't tell you when you ovulate. That's when I have so many people freaking out. They're like, my period's 2 months late. I'm like, is it? Or did you just not ovulate? That's where you have to focus on the ovulation. The other thing that I think is so important, and I'm sure that they hear this from you, is that you have to understand what you're expecting when you go into a doctor, right? You don't go to a hardware store and ask to buy a piano. They'll look at you like you have two heads. And so when you're going into your conventional doctor, you have to remember that they treat acute situations, right? And most of the situations that are going on are lifestyle, they're nutrition, and they're more chronic, right? And you're not sick enough to need a diagnosis and a pill, but you're not healthy enough to feel amazing. You're somewhere in the middle. So if you go to the doctor and you have all of your things, you're like, I'm ready to fight. Hey, probably don't go in with that attitude. But if you go in and you respectfully ask for something, and let's say they run it and they go, oh, everything's normal. Well, there's a very big difference between normal and optimal, right? We're looking for optimal. What's the healthiest of the healthiest really going to look like? But then B, what really are they going to do, right? You're not sick enough for a pill. And it's like, if you're going there and you're not at that point for that diagnosis, what you need is lifestyle and nutrition support. And you need the lifestyle. Like right now, your lifestyle has gotten to you to where you are. So you need to change the lifestyle and put the body in a healing environment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be drastic, but that's not what your doctor specializes in, right? So what are they going to tell you, right? And so that's when you go and you find people like Jenn, you find people like me, you find people in the functional space and the holistic health space, and you go, hey, I need help, right? Because that's what we specialize in. But, if you break your arm, please go to the doctor, right?
Totally.
If you need something more serious like that, it's always good to rule out things that are serious. And then, your doctor's like, well, it's normal. Not that anybody wants to hear that, but then you go, great. Now this is a lifestyle. This is a nutrition thing.
Awesome. And so that's where I want to take this next, is sort of shifting into how each phase impacts our metabolic health and how we support all of that. Really quick, though, let's do a message from our partner for this episode. All right. Big thanks to DNA Miracles for supporting Salad with a Side of Fries. Because every child is a miracle, DNA Miracles provides the highest quality body and wellness products designed for babies, children, and expectant mothers. All products are gentle, easy to use, and 100% effective when used as directed. DNA Miracles partnered with leading health professionals and scientists who follow the highest standards in ingredient selection to create the most effective skin, hair, and health solutions. As natural as possible, DNA Miracles is the best and safest option on the market for you and your little miracle. From expert pediatricians to real family testimonials, everyone has fallen in love with DNA Miracles. So today we're focusing on all things hormone related, right? A lot of endocrine disruptors that we don't realize are coming from the products that we put on our skin. And we often think about what's going on baby's skin, but what's going on mom and dad and everybody's skin who's around the baby. Think skin to skin contact, right? So I highly recommend all of the DNA Miracles body products and the shower gel. There's a bubble bath. I even love it. So lots of options, super cost effective. Just for some perspective, right? Even the multivitamin, they have one starting at $16.95 for a 30-day serving. So we're not breaking the bank here. The bedtime bath bundle is a great little gift. It gives you, all the things in there so you can sort of clean house in one fell swoop. So to check out DNA Miracles, you get 10% off and free shipping for being a Salad with a Side of Fries listener. So simply text the word miracles, MIRACLES, miracles plural with an S, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word miracles to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code for 10% off and free shipping. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. All right. So, Leah, we've talked about the phases. Now let's talk about, as you were just saying, the lifestyle elements in supporting each phase, or even if we notice that some adjustments need to be made.
Yeah. So let's go super basic. So you can get really into this with food cycling and nutrition cycling and even down to when should you go into the sauna? When should you do cold plunges?
Yes.
All of these types of things. But I know you love blood sugar balance. So let's
I was just going to say, we're both saying glucose people. Yeah.
Literally, it's just, if I could just impart into everybody, every human needs it. So in your follicular phase, so when you're done bleeding, and ovulatory phase, so think of those kind of together there, you are more sensitive to insulin. So this is where you also build muscle easier during this time. You are a little bit more prone to injury though. So make sure you warm up correctly. So during this time, you do handle carbs better. You handle the carbs better. And, maybe you are putting on the muscle and you're doing the more of the HIIT workouts. And so maybe this is a time when you do up carbs, right? But I think this is so important to just understand that once you ovulate and you head into that luteal phase, you are less sensitive to insulin. So the ice cream you ate in the follicular phase and it really didn't make you cranky. You eat that in the luteal phase without balancing your blood sugar and you are all of a sudden hangry. And everyone's like, oh, she's just PMSy. You probably think that yourself. You're like, I crave all of the foods and then I eat and you get hangry, right? But you ate that 2 weeks ago and it wasn't as big of a deal. Your glucose, if you eat like ice cream in follicular phase, well, it goes up. Obviously, it's going to spike it. But then you eat it in your luteal phase and it's like, whoa, where did that go? Off the charts for your glucose. And we know what goes up is going to come crashing down at some point, and that's going to bring up your cortisol levels, right? Your fight or flight hormones, because it's going to want to bring up your blood sugar. You're cranky, you're hangry, you're shaky, and all you want is more chocolate, right? Because your body's smart. It knows that it needs to get that blood sugar up. What's going to bring it up? Probably carbs that are going to go into fast glucose and sugar, right? So when we understand that, you're really not crazy when all of a sudden you have all the cravings. After ovulation, you also burn upwards of an extra 300 calories per day. That's also why you're not why you want to eat the pantry, right? Why you crave the chocolate. You're literally burning more calories because of that progesterone and you're less sensitive to insulin. So I think structuring that is really, really important, and knowing that blood sugar balance is always important. But after you ovulate, it just becomes your full-time job. Okay, not really, because once you know how to do it, it's really not that much work, but it's so important. You have more protein needs you need more protein in your luteal phase, okay? And you also want to up those fats a little bit because that's how we make hormones. That's how we make hormones, right? Pregnenolone comes from cholesterol. You need those good fats. So I think just understanding that at such a basic level, it's like, oh, I build muscle easier before ovulation. I'm more sensitive to insulin. I handle carbs better. After ovulation, I'm less sensitive to insulin. I'm literally burning more calories. And if you do not focus on balancing your blood sugar and literally getting in more protein and more fats during that time, because I think we hear 300 extra calories and we go, great, I'll lose a couple of pounds. If you are cutting the calories at that time, you guys, cortisol levels, stress levels, it's going to make it even harder to lose weight. So just understanding that basic principle and following it makes weight loss so much easier because you aren't putting your body into this state of fight or flight where it's like, I need to hold on to everything because we're in a famine.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah. Super sweet and simple. More protein.
And to your point, we could start there, understanding, and we even talked about when you were going through the phases, our sleep needs at different times, right? And then we talked about the activity needs. So we have this lifestyle piece of the nutrition, the sleep, the stress, the activity that allows us to support the whole cycle.
Yes.
Right? Now, I mentioned this before, we're going to have some episodes coming up at birth control and getting off birth control, but help people understand, for the sake of today's conversation, we mentioned it as medicated menopause, right? Mm-hmm. And some of these, and so if somebody is on birth control, a lot of what we just talked about doesn't really apply.
No, it doesn't. You don't have that fluctuation. You don't have the extra burning calories. You should still balance your blood sugar.
Mic drop. Full stop. Balance your blood sugar. Right. But so recognizing too, having these exogenous, right, the added to the body impact and influence on our hormones is not balancing them. The birth control isn't regulating anything. It is manipulating.
Mm-hmm. And suppressing.
Right.
Shutting down. All these drastic words. But I think we need to understand what it's actually doing. It's synthetic fake hormones. It's shutting down your natural cycle. So I have a lot of women that are like, oh, I want to cycle sync. I'm like, you can if you want to, but you aren't going to notice the same benefits because it's not a natural cycle. So you aren't working with the flux of your hormones. And this is so drastic, but I've heard doctors literally tell patients, I can't test your hormones because they're always imbalanced. Always in flux. And I'm like, well, I mean, if you know where they are in flux, like you should know what they should look like. And I had a client's husband, she showed him the menstrual cycle and he goes, oh my goodness, how do we like flatline those? Like, how do you make them like a straight line? She goes, no, like we are not men. Like our hormones are supposed to fluctuate through each of the phases. That's how our hormones work. And when they are in balance, they should still have that fluctuation, but they shouldn't fluctuate so wildly and sharply that it affects like moods and energy. Like you can still have balanced hormones that are in movement.
Yeah. And I love that. And it's a really important distinction because we're not going to be steady state. Like that would actually be counter to health and counter to nature. So let's also talk about briefly here, sort of perimenopause, because I think this is another piece where people get very confused and another time in life where our doctors say, okay, your options are birth control or hormone replacement therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us a little bit about approaching this phase because it's confusing.
It is. I think the number one thing you need to think about with perimenopause and menopause is that think about your body as your bank account. And if you have not putting deposits in, you're going to be very overdrawn by the time you get to perimenopause. And so by that, I mean, like, are you constantly not caring about nutrition, like always grabbing food on the go, like not nourishing your body? Are you never doing anything to manage your stress, getting in consistent movement to like protect muscle and bone density, like lifting or, whatever that is for you, nourishing, like, with minerals and optimizing that? You get to perimenopause. It's a change, right? And that doesn't mean it needs to be a bad change. It's just a change. And if you are so withdrawn, like you haven't put in any deposit, your body just goes, right? And you get the hot flashes and you get the weight gain and you're super cranky and you have tons of dryness and you have zero libido and you're just like, I hate menopause, right? But if you can put in these deposits over and over and over, then it can be such a much smoother transition, right? So really continuing to ovulate to the best of your ability, like really supporting that ovulation until you head into menopause instead of sporadic ovulations, really important. And stress, like your adrenals are what produce that progesterone after ovulation. And if you have just been calling on those adrenals and spiking that cortisol and spiking that adrenaline, and you get to menopause, your adrenals are like, well, you didn't take care of me, so see you later, right? And it really, really is it's so drastic, right? Because you think, oh, I can do anything in my 20s, right? And then you can't, you get that saying of, my husband can cut out coffee creamer and lose weight and I can sniff a donut and it goes right to my hips, right? You guys, you really need to nourish your body as you head into perimenopause and menopause, always. But we act like it's this one day. It was just one day.
Just flip a switch.
Yes. And it's like, no, if we've been overtaxing and we've been over withdrawing for so long, it's going to catch up. And for some women, it catches up at menopause, right? So really supporting those adrenals, like managing that stress and getting that nutrition up, right? We tend to like just cut calories more and more and more and more.
Please stop doing that. Balance blood sugar instead.
Yes.
Right.
And it's like, you need more protein. You need more protein as you head into menopause and supporting that blood sugar and supporting those adrenals, right? Because again, spiking blood sugar, what happens? Your cortisol is going to come up to help bring that blood sugar back up when it drops. So I really think like perimenopause and menopause, minerals are so important because, they are the spark plugs to life and nourishment for your adrenals. So those are so important, but also I think just a simple understanding of that you actually have to put deposits in, we just are constantly like going to the ATM and like withdrawing. Oh, it's fine. I'll stay up till 1 a.m. Oh, I don't have time to make a meal today. I'm just going to like grab something on my way out the door. Oh, I don't have time to do my workout today. So, 5 weeks later, or I don't have time to manage my stress. I don't have time to go outside, right? It catches up.
Yeah. Sadly. And you started, literally our brains are in the same place because you started to mention what exactly I wanted to talk about next, which is minerals.
I love minerals.
I know.
They're so good.
So we could do an entire episode just on minerals. especially when it comes to, our hormones, balancing hormones, and where we might want to put some emphasis depending on what we're experiencing.
Yes. So minerals are the spark plugs to your life, and they are the building blocks to your hormones. Okay. So when you look at minerals, I always do a hair test because blood wants to stay at homeostasis. So it pulls and pushes minerals to and from the hair. So you see things in the hair before you see it in the blood. So it's very preventative in that way. But you have four main minerals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. And fortunately, a lot of these you really can't supplement with unless you test, because you can just throw things through the roof, right? And so that's why you're like, oh, I tried that supplement and I felt worse, or I tried that one and it did nothing. You probably didn't need it, right? One that I think most people can safely supplement with is magnesium. So magnesium is your relaxation hormone, and 78% of women are deficient in the US, right? And again, always talk to your provider before you start supplementing, but most women really benefit from magnesium. Malate and glycinate are the two more absorbable forms. Citrate, I know everybody knows citrate because it makes you poop, but it also kind of wrecks your insides if you take it long term. So when you're thinking about magnesium, your relaxation mineral, right? What do we need to relax? We need, that's going to help with PMS. That's going to help with cramps. That's going to help with stress. The more stressed you are, the more depleted magnesium gets in the cell, and then the more susceptible we are to stress. So a lot of women who are deficient in magnesium have really bad periods. They have a lot of anxiety. Maybe they have cold hands and feet. They have restless leg, symptoms of hypothyroidism, blood sugar issues. I love magnesium. So that's a great one, like your spark plug. And then another one, sodium, potassium are your adrenal minerals. Now, again, this is where I hesitate. Like, start with food. Like potassium, you really need to test. Like, don't go around like trying to pop potassium pills. Really, really test, but you can start with food. So, getting your electrolytes in, putting a little Celtic sea salt in your water, getting potassium rich foods in. Potassium is your stress mineral. The more stressed you are, the more tanked it gets. It also, one of its jobs is sensitizing your cell to your thyroid hormone. Anybody have thyroid symptoms, but thyroid panels are normal? Minerals. Minerals sensitize your cell to your hormones, right? So minerals, like I said, are those building blocks. So even though hormones look normal and you have all these issues, you look to minerals. You look to minerals. So I'll just give you a basic. You can make a good old adrenal cocktail. They're like super the rage, but I will tell you why. It's because it has sodium, potassium, and vitamin C, which are the things that your adrenals love. So you can do orange juice. Be hesitant with orange juice because of blood sugar. You can use camu powder. That's another great one. Or you can use anything with vitamin C. And then I like to mix that with coconut water. Hello, potassium. Or full fat coconut milk. Hello, potassium. I'll do like a half a teaspoon of Celtic sea salt, a fourth a teaspoon of cream of tartar. It's great for potassium. Again, you can put a scoop of collagen peptides in there to help your blood sugar. So if you do orange juice, I encourage you to have that with a meal. But yeah, mix that up and try that out for size. It's going to be a little salty, but that is generally, again, always talk with your provider before you try anything, but it's generally pretty good for most people because it's food. We're starting with food, right? But I find hair mineral analysis is just the golden ticket for starting things because minerals are truly your spark plugs. And so it's like, I'll have, women with all these hormonal issues, and it's like all hormone panels are normal, but it's because minerals sensitize your cells. So they have to be there, right?
And they have to be where they're needed. I think that's one of the issues with blood testing in general is that, like, especially with calcium, like we don't actually want calcium in the blood. We need it in all these other places.
Yes.
So anyway.
Magnesium, like only 1% of it you're going to find in the blood. It's stored in the bones, right? The bones and the tissues. And so, blood tests are great for certain things. And then hair tests are great for certain things. Like knowing where you're testing is super important. Like you said, minerals need to be where you want them.
Awesome. All right. I love it. I feel like we could go on forever. Let's bookend it for today.
Yes.
Our handful of rapid fire off-topic questions. You ready?
I'm ready, I think.
What's the best thing you've done for your health this week? What's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
Oh, so the best thing that I've done is actually cut my workouts back a little bit. So I
love that.
was just on my period. And I also would track with my Oura ring, and it was like, my recovery is not that good. And so that was something that was, not so great. But then I also, this is the tricky part. My child has an alarm clock recently of like 5 a.m. And I have not been getting up. I have not been going to bed early enough because I've been trying to do all of the things. And unfortunately, I think that also is what nicked my recovery and my tiredness. And so again, what's that affect? Your cravings, because you're not sleeping super great.
Yeah. I'm like holding myself back from going, well, leptin. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. If you weren't a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, what would you do?
I would still probably be in music. Yep. I'd be doing wedding gigs and still performing.
Favorite book on any topic other than your area of expertise, or a fiction book? You guys, I wish you could see Leah's face right now.
Oh, you guys, that's really, 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 really hard. I was an avid reader growing up. And so trying to think of like the books that I continually go back to and reread. And I don't have any because I need to find new books all the time. I did really enjoy The Lord of the Rings. I actually am re-listening to it on audiobook.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. We used to use Lord of the Rings in business school.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm terrible at rapid fire. I need to take my comments elsewhere. Okay. If you could cure one ailment, disease, or sickness, what would it be?
Autism.
If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower?
Okay, I totally would want to be invisible.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
When people chew with their mouth open.
Oh, I feel you. All right, last one. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
I see a lot of things about blood sugar, but I think it's cells. Because like sensitizing your cells and like how are you utilizing hormones and nutrition at that level? Because they're saying, oh, your levels are normal, but it's like, why is this not working? I think we might be headed there.
Awesome. Well, Leah, thank you for being here. Tell everybody how to connect with you, where to find more, all the things.
Yeah. So you can catch me on my podcast, Balancing Hormones Naturally. And I am typically hanging on Instagram, which is LEAH_BRUEG. That's pretty much my name on all platforms, but I am most active on Instagram.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you again. I know we could talk for hours. We've done it on your show, at my show. So maybe we'll have to do a repeat series here.
Yes.
All right. So this week's nutrition nugget, if you're ready, on Friday, we are talking about grapes. So throw them in the freezer for an awesome summer snack or dessert. And at the same time, people are often told to avoid them, right? That's typically because of their sugar content. So which is it? Do we want them or do we want to avoid them? And what's the difference between all the colors? Does it matter, right? Other than the kind of wine they make? So I got you. We're going to tackle all of these questions on Friday. So be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow, and then your app will alert you when the Nutrition Nugget goes live on Friday morning. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or really all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideoffries.com. Whatever platform makes you happy, send a message. Like, I want to hear from you, your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. This is also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. So, Leah, thank you again for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure. I love chatting with you.
Likewise. So, friend, if you are not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/saladwithasideoffries to show your support for this podcast, this community, most importantly, support your health. You'll get this week's recipe for the breakfast casserole, the article from Levels, the link between PCOS and insulin resistance, and details to schedule your quarterly live session, just you and me, for 30 minutes. So until next week, remember, you can balance your hormones naturally. It's another way to work with your body instead of fighting against it. And adding these tools to your tool belt might be the answer. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.